What if I told you the most powerful move you could ever make is to do absolutely nothing? Not out of pride, not to trigger regret, but because the moment you stop chasing what walked away and start reclaiming what never should have been lost, is the moment everything begins to shift. Not in her, in you. This isn't about silence as a strategy, it's about silence as a mirror. Because there's a quiet illusion that lives in the heart of almost every man after loss, that waiting equals power, that time alone will bring her back, that your absence is enough to create her realization. But the truth is, they don't come back because you disappeared. They come back when you're no longer needing them to, when your stillness is no longer a tactic, but a transformation. Today we're not just talking about statistics. We're talking about identity, about the kind of emotional clarity that doesn't beg to be seen, but becomes unforgettable when it's no longer performing to be chosen. So if you're tired of reacting, if you're ready to rise, not with noise, but with direction, then you're exactly where you need to be. This is Stoic Station. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's begin. There's a quiet illusion that lives in every man's heart after the loss. It sounds like hope, but it feels like hesitation. You see the statistic, 30 to 65% of exes come back, and it lodges itself deep inside your mind. It whispers that time will do the work for you, that if you just disappear long enough, she'll realize what she lost and come running back. And so, you wait. You wait in silence, but not in peace. You wait with one eye on her story, one ear tuned for a message, one foot still planted in the past. But the truth, the one no number ever teaches, is that they don't come back because you waited. They come back because you changed, not into someone louder, needier, or more strategic, but into someone still, someone sovereign. The kind of man who no longer needs her to return in order to feel whole. Most men never get there. They perform silence the way an actor plays grief, convincing but not lived. You stop texting, but your energy still clings. You vanish from her inbox, but never from her orbit. You leave the stage, but wait behind the curtain hoping for applause. And that's not transformation, that's tension. It's not letting go, it's bargaining with fate. Real no contact isn't a strategy to win her back, it's a threshold, and most never cross it, because real no contact is silent in the way a mountain is silent, not passive, but unmoved. You're not pretending to be gone while watching her life from a distance. You're not secretly hoping she notices your absence. You're not waiting in the shadows for a door to open again. You've closed it, not to punish her, but to return to yourself. Attachment theory calls it anxious uncertainty, where love gets tangled with fear, where we confuse silence with suspense. But when your silence is driven by fear, she can feel it. When it's built on the hope she'll return, she knows. And in that energy, there's no gravity, there's only pull, only performance. But the shift, the one that makes her feel the difference, is when the silence becomes clean, when it's no longer about her noticing, but about you not needing her to. That's the paradox. When you finally stop living in reaction to her absence, you become the man whose presence she starts to feel again. Not because you reached for her, but because you rose without her. She won't miss the man who stayed in the same place, quietly waiting. She'll miss the man who evolved in his silence, the one who didn't perform detachment, but lived it, the one who stopped making her the center of his recovery and made peace the center of his purpose. That's when the numbers stop mattering. That's when you realize this was never about the chances. It was always about the change. That's the part most men miss, the difference between distance and detachment. You can walk away physically, you can block her number, delete the thread, even unfollow every trace of her life. But if your mind still circles back, if your emotions still orbit her, you haven't left. You've just changed the scenery of your waiting. What changes everything isn't time, and it's not tactics. It's stillness, not the kind that waits for something to happen, but the kind that happens when you stop needing anything at all. Psychologists call it response inhibition, the ability to feel the impulse to act and not act, the discipline to sit with discomfort, to breathe through the ache, and choose yourself again and again. That's not weakness, that's power in its most unshakable form. Because the truth is, when she pulls away, most men chase. Not always with words, but with energy. They explain, justify, check, react. And every time you do, you hand her back the power she gave up when she walked away. You're not proving your love. You're proving your dependence. And dependence has never been attractive. Stillness isn't retreat, it's refusal. It's the quiet, steady decision to stop gambling with your self-worth just to feel visible again. Because chasing, even emotionally, tells her, "You're still the center of my world." But real stillness tells a different story. "I've become the center of mine." At first, your absence might feel like relief to her, freedom, space. She might even feel lighter, unburdened, validated in her decision. But space only feels empowering when there's something meaningful to fill it. And eventually, when the distractions fade, when the novelty wears thin, when the attention elsewhere stops being enough, the space turns on her. The silence begins to echo, and what once felt like control now feels like a question she can't answer. That's when she notices you're not there anymore, not even emotionally. You're not hoping, you're not watching, you're not lingering in her shadow, you're not setting traps, you're healing. And that presence, that grounded, invisible strength, is what redefines the entire narrative. You're no longer someone she left behind. You're someone she lost, and not because you vanished to hurt her, but because you rose in the absence of her validation. The science calls it the endowment effect, the tendency to overvalue something once we feel it slipping beyond our reach. And when your energy is no longer available to her, when you've truly unplugged from the idea that she has to choose you for your worth to exist, something begins to stir in her. Not because you forced it, but because you stopped performing for it. You don't have to prove you've changed. You don't have to send a message outlining your growth. She'll feel it, not in your words, but in your stillness. Because stillness has weight, and eventually it becomes heavier than all the noise you could have made. That's how the power shifts, not because you waited, but because you learned how to become the man she could no longer reach. That stillness you've stepped into, it's not silence for silence's sake. It's not coldness, and it's not cruelty. It's not a punishment for her leaving. It's a decision to stop abandoning yourself in the name of being understood. You're not ignoring her to hurt her. You're no longer shrinking to be seen. You're rebuilding, without applause, without recognition, and most importantly, without her validation. And let's be clear, this isn't about making her chase you. That's not the goal, and it never should have been. You've simply reached the place where you finally see it for what it is. If someone can walk away after seeing everything you gave, then they deserve to sit with the weight of that decision, without you softening the landing, without you reaching back to cushion the fall they chose, without you offering comfort for a consequence they created. Because the moment you stop trying to remind her of your worth is the moment she starts to remember it. But that remembering only holds meaning if it's no longer what you need. When your value no longer depends on her recognition, when your healing no longer relies on her return, that's when you stop waiting for her to come back and start walking forward without looking back. And that's the beauty of it. Your silence, when it's honest, when it's clean, isn't a weapon. It's a mirror, a quiet reflection of everything she overlooked. Most men believe that silence is the trick, that if they say nothing, she'll come running. But that's not power, that's manipulation dressed in restraint. True silence doesn't echo with bitterness, it hums with clarity. It's the moment when you stop performing, stop reacting, stop trying to craft the perfect story that proves she was wrong. Because you don't need her to realize what she lost for you to reclaim what you deserve. You've already done that. And it's in that shift, in that deep, unwavering peace, that everything starts to move. Not because you pushed, not because you chased, but because presence carries a weight that pressure never can. When your energy no longer seeks to be chosen, it becomes undeniable. Not loud, not forceful, just real. This isn't about turning the tables. It's about flipping the script on yourself. The old version of you needed her response to feel worthy. The man you're becoming knows that choosing peace over being chosen is the highest form of strength. That's when the tide turns, not in the moment she texts you back, not when she finally watches your story again, but in the moment you no longer need any of it to validate who you are. Because what you're doing now, it's not withholding love, it's protecting it. It's no longer placing it in hands that didn't know how to hold it. And that's the man she remembers, not because he stayed visible, but because when he disappeared, he became unforgettable. When a woman walks away and you no longer chase, the space between you becomes something else entirely. Not a tactic, not tension, but a quiet field of consequence. And as you continue to rise, not in bitterness but in calm, that space begins to whisper things she didn't expect to hear. Not your words, but her own thoughts, her own comparison, her own questions. This is where regret starts to grow, not because you engineered it, but because you didn't try to avoid it. Behavioral psychology has long understood what most men only learn through heartbreak. People don't fear change as much as they fear loss. It's called loss aversion, and it explains why she may have chosen freedom, but now feels the ache of what she let go, especially when what she sees from you is not pain, not pettiness, not pressure, but presence. A man no longer looking back. Then there's cognitive dissonance, that inner conflict that shows up when someone sees you thriving without them. When your life looks fuller, your face calmer, your silence no longer sad but sovereign, it clashes with the version of you she thought she left behind, and the brain, desperate to resolve that dissonance, begins rewriting the narrative. Not because she misses what you were, but because she doesn't recognize what you've become, and that unfamiliarity can feel like loss. Add to that the nostalgia bias, the mind's natural tendency to smooth over the cracks in memory, to remember the comfort but forget the conflict, and suddenly the past doesn't look so disposable anymore, especially when you're no longer playing the part of the man who needed her to stay. You've shifted, quietly, fully, and that shift is what creates the gravity that no amount of pleading ever could. So yes, many exes do return, but not because you waited, not because you sent the right text. They return when the silence becomes a mirror instead of a trap, when it reflects not their loneliness, but your transformation. Because the truth is, the men women chase back aren't the ones who lingered, they're the ones who left the version of themselves that used to wait. The men who chose themselves, the ones who didn't fold when they weren't chosen, the ones who rebuilt not in reaction, but in self-respect. You're not here to win her back, you're here to come back to yourself, and if one day she circles back, you won't be rushing to meet her. You'll be walking at your own pace, in your own direction. Not because you've closed your heart, but because you've opened your eyes. And when that moment arrives, if it ever does, the question won't be, will she come back? That question has already lost its grip. The real question, the one only a grounded man can ask, will be, can she even love the man I've become? That's the moment you'll know the work was worth it. You didn't just heal, you elevated. You didn't just hold the line, you built a new one. You didn't just survive the silence, you turned it into your sanctuary. You didn't just let her go, you found your way home. Summary: what I've just walked you through isn't a formula, it's a shift from chasing to choosing, from reacting to reclaiming, from waiting for her return to returning to yourself. That quiet illusion that she'll come back if you just stay silent long enough is what keeps most men stuck. But silence isn't powerful until it's clean, until it's no longer fueled by hope, but by healing. If you've been holding your breath for a text, watching her stories like they still include you, wondering if the numbers mean anything, understand this: they don't come back because you disappear. They come back when you become unreachable in the way that matters most, emotionally. The lesson here is simple but sharp. Stillness is not what makes her miss you, it's what makes you stop needing her to. And from that space, calm, clear, and grounded, you don't just get stronger, you become unforgettable. Let the silence say what words never could. Let it be the mirror, let it be the proof, and above all, let it be enough. If something in these words held up a mirror, don't turn away. Breathe with it, walk with it. Let it guide the next decision you make, not out of fear, but from quiet certainty. Like the video, subscribe to Stoic Station, and remember, the men they return to aren't the ones who waited. They're the ones who no longer needed to.